My name is Cheryl Butler, and at 30 years old, I never thought I'd hear the words, "pay rent or get out," screamed at me in front of my entire family. It happened at our annual family reunion in Portland. 15 relatives, folding chairs, paper plates, laughter that felt forced. And then, my stepmother's voice cut through everything. "Pay rent or get out, Cheryl." Her face was red, her jaw tight, like I was some freeloading stranger instead of the woman who'd been quietly keeping their lives afloat for years. My younger brother Ryan didn't even look surprised. He leaned back in his chair, smirked, and muttered loud enough for everyone to hear, "That's your responsibility anyway." The backyard went silent. Every eye turned toward me. Some looked uncomfortable, some looked entertained, and some nodded, as if I deserved the humiliation. My chest tightened, not because of the accusation, but because of the truth they refused to acknowledge. For years, I'd been the one wiring money late at night, covering salon rent, covering credit card bills, covering just one more emergency. And in that moment, standing there with my hands shaking, I realized something terrifying. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as a resource. I felt something inside me snap, not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. What none of them knew was that I'd already built my way out. $1 million apartment in the heart of Portland, paid for quietly, with money I'd earned myself, money I'd never told them about. That night, I walked away from the reunion, and I never went back. But this story didn't start there. It started 7 years earlier, the day my mother died. When my mom passed away, I was 23 and barely holding my life together. Cancer took her quickly, too quickly. She was the emotional center of our family, the one who smoothed arguments, balanced egos, and reminded everyone to be kind. When she was gone, the house felt hollow. My dad, Stephen Butler, tried to move forward, but grief settled into him like a permanent weight. A year later, he remarried Patricia Wells. I wanted to believe Patricia would bring stability. Instead, she brought expectations, sharp ones. She ran a nail salon that always seemed one bad month away from shutting down, and almost immediately, she started leaning on me. At first, it was subtle. A comment about rent being due, a sigh about supply costs, a casual, "You're good with money, right?" I was working odd jobs then, still grieving, still trying to find my footing. But I sent what I could, because keeping the peace felt easier than saying no. Ryan, my younger brother, was 20 at the time. He called himself an artist. What that really meant was sneakers, gadgets, and chasing whatever trend looked expensive enough to impress people online. "Just this once," he'd say, and then it became every month. My dad stayed quiet, retired early, avoided conflict, and somehow, without anyone ever asking me directly, I became the one responsible. The only person who ever saw through it was my grandmother, Edith Harper, 85, sharp as hell. She pulled me aside one afternoon and whispered, "You're not their bank, Cheryl." I laughed it off, but her words stayed with me, because deep down, I knew she was right. Years later, after my career in financial consulting collapsed spectacularly, my family vanished when I needed them most. I lost a major contract, lost my savings, lost my confidence. When I called Patricia, she barely listened before redirecting the conversation to her salon problems. Ryan asked if I could still send his money. My dad didn't pick up. That was the moment I learned something painful. Support in my family only flowed one direction. So I rebuilt alone. I took the last of what I had and opened a small restaurant in Portland. Local food, long hours, no safety net. I worked until my feet hurt and my hands burned, and slowly, it worked. The restaurant became profitable, then successful, then stable. I never told my family how well I was doing, but I kept sending money. Because guilt is a powerful leash, and because part of me still hoped they'd see me. By the time the reunion came around, I'd already been supporting them for years. $2,000 a month to Patricia's salon, $500 a month to Ryan, over $30,000 a year. And still, it wasn't enough. So when Patricia screamed at me in that backyard, when Ryan smirked and called it my responsibility, when my dad stayed silent, I finally understood. Love you have to buy isn't love. I didn't realize how deeply I'd been trained to accept being used until my life finally started working. When the restaurant stabilized, something shifted inside me. Not confidence, clarity. I understood money differently now. I understood exhaustion. And I understood what it meant to build something with no one catching you if you fall. But my family didn't change with me. They escalated. Patricia started calling more often. Not panicked calls, strategic ones. She'd ask questions first. How's business? Still busy? Staff treating you okay? Then she'd slide it in. Rent went up. Suppliers are squeezing us. You know how hard it is out here. There was never a can you, only an expectation that I already would. Ryan followed the same pattern, just louder. Every request came wrapped in entitlement and humor. Like if he laughed while asking, it wouldn't sound as ugly. You're killing it, Cheryl, he'd say. So what's $500? 500 turned into 1,000, then emergencies, then guilt. He loved using Mom's name. She wouldn't want me struggling like this. She'd be disappointed if you didn't help. Every time he said it, my chest tightened, because he knew exactly where to press. Meanwhile, my dad watched it all from the sidelines, never objected, never defended me, never said, "That's enough." Silence can be louder than cruelty. Running the restaurant meant 16-hour days, inventory, payroll, staffing drama, health inspections, smiling for customers even when my body begged me to sit down. At night, I'd open my laptop to balance the books, and there it was, their numbers. A clean, repeating drain on my life. I wasn't broke, but I wasn't free either. What hurt the most wasn't the money. It was how invisible my effort was to them. Patricia never asked how tired I was. Ryan never asked how I was holding up. They only cared that the money kept coming. And when it didn't arrive fast enough, they noticed. Patricia once texted me at 6:12 a.m. "Did you forget the transfer?" No hello, no good morning, just a reminder. That was the moment I stared at my phone and thought, when did I become an obligation instead of a daughter? The first crack showed up during a holiday dinner, Thanksgiving, my dad's house. I brought wine, I brought dessert, I brought patience. Patricia didn't bring gratitude. She commented on my clothes, on how comfortable my life must be. "Must be nice," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Not worrying about money." I smiled tightly. Ryan laughed. "Yeah, Cheryl's basically rich now." Rich. I thought about the nights I slept on the restaurant floor, the credit card debt I quietly paid off, the fear of failure that never fully left. But to them, I was rich, therefore obligated. My grandma squeezed my hand under the table. I should have listened to her sooner. Around this time, I bought my apartment. Not impulsively, not emotionally, strategically. $1 million place in the heart of Portland. Modern, quiet, mine. Every cent came from my work. I told no one in my family, because I already knew what it would become. Another justification, another reason they deserved more. Instead, I told my cousin Denise. She stared at me across the cafe table and said, "You realize they'll never stop, right?" I shrugged. "I can handle it." She shook her head slowly. "No, you're surviving them. That's not the same thing." Denise wasn't emotional about family. She was surgical. And she asked the question that haunted me for weeks. What happens when you stop paying? I didn't have an answer. The pressure intensified after that. Patricia's tone sharpened, less polite, more demanding. Ryan started making jokes in front of other people. "Don't worry," he'd say. "My sister's got it covered." It wasn't funny anymore. It was branding. They were rewriting the family narrative. I wasn't the hard-working daughter. I wasn't the resilient sister. I was the provider. And providers don't get thanked. They get used. The breaking point didn't come suddenly. It crept in slowly, through exhaustion, resentment, and the growing sense that I was disappearing inside my own life. I'd stand in my apartment at night, lights off, city glowing outside my windows, and I'd ask myself, if I stopped tomorrow, who would notice me, not my money? The answer terrified me. By the time the reunion was announced, my stomach already hurt. Patricia insisted I come. Ryan said it wouldn't be complete without me. That should have been my warning. Because people don't insist on your presence when they value you. They insist when they expect something. I didn't know yet that the reunion wouldn't just humiliate me. It would expose everything. And once it did, there would be no going back. I almost didn't go to the reunion. That morning, I stood in my apartment staring at myself in the mirror, already tired. Not physically, emotionally. Something in my body knew what my mind hadn't admitted yet. This wasn't a family gathering. It was a reckoning. But I went anyway, because part of me still believed if I showed up enough, gave enough, stayed quiet enough, maybe I'd finally be seen. I drove to my dad's house with that familiar knot in my stomach, the one I'd learned to ignore over the years. The backyard looked the same as always. Plastic tables, folding chairs, food laid out like proof of togetherness. About 15 people were there, relatives, friends, neighbors. Patricia greeted me with a smile that never reached her eyes. Ryan barely looked up from his phone. I felt it immediately. That charged, uncomfortable air, like everyone was waiting for something to happen. At first, it was small. Patricia made comments about how rarely I visited. Ryan joked about how busy I must be now. I smiled, nodded, played my role. But then Patricia's tone shifted. She raised her voice just enough for nearby conversations to quiet. "You know," she said, "it's funny how some people live here and don't contribute." My chest tightened. I waited, hoping she'd stop. She didn't. She stood up, and then she said it. Either start paying rent like an adult, or get out. The backyard froze. Forks stopped midair. Conversations died. I felt every eye land on me. Heat rushed to my face. Not embarrassment. Rage. Ryan laughed under his breath and leaned forward. Yeah, Cheryl, he said. You're not a kid anymore. You can't just coast while everyone else struggles. Coast. I looked at him. Really looked. The sneakers I'd paid for. The phone I'd paid for. The life he pretended he'd built himself. And something in me broke open. Not loudly. Cleanly. I stood up. My hands were shaking, but my voice wasn't. Don't talk about struggle like you understand it, I said, looking straight at Ryan. His smile faltered. I turned to Patricia. I've been sending you money every single month, I said. Quietly, reliably, without thanks. She scoffed. That doesn't mean anything. Family doesn't keep score. I laughed, once, sharp. No, I said. Family doesn't demand. Leeches do. A few people gasped. My dad finally looked up, startled, uncomfortable. Patricia's face hardened. You're being dramatic, she snapped. You've always thought you were better than us. That was it. I stepped closer. You want honesty? I said. I built my life from nothing while you treated me like a safety net. Ryan jumped in, irritated now. So what? You think you can just walk away? You owe us. We're your family. I turned to him. I don't owe you my adulthood, I said. I don't owe you my paycheck. And I don't owe you a future you refuse to build yourself. His jaw tightened. Patricia crossed her arms. If you walk out, she said coldly, don't expect to come back. You'll be dead to this family. I looked at my dad. He didn't say a word, didn't defend me, didn't stop her. That silence answered everything. So I nodded. Good, I said quietly, because I'm done being alive only when my money is. The yard was silent. I picked up my bag, and I left. The drive home felt unreal, like my body had finally caught up with what my soul had known for years. I didn't cry. I felt clear. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, city lights glowing through the windows I'd paid for myself. And for the first time, I didn't feel guilty. I felt angry, focused, resolved. The next morning, I opened my laptop, not to work, to end it. I logged into my bank account and stared at the recurring payments. Patricia, $2,000. Ryan, $500. Years of conditioning tried to stop me. What if they can't survive? What if this ruins them? What if Mom would be disappointed? Then I remembered Patricia's voice, Ryan's smirk, my dad's silence, and I clicked cancel. Both of them. I blocked their numbers, their emails, every channel they'd ever used to reach me. No dramatic announcement, no explanation, just action. That was my plan. Not revenge, not punishment. Boundaries. I focused on my restaurant, on my savings, on protecting the life I'd built quietly while they were counting my money. I called my cousin Denise. I did it, I said. She exhaled. Good. Now don't look back. I called my grandma. She didn't say, "I told you so." She said, "I'm proud of you for choosing yourself." And for the first time in years, I believed it was okay to be. The silence after cutting them off was louder than I expected. For the first few weeks, my phone stayed quiet. No calls, no texts, no emergencies. And that alone told me everything. When there was no money to collect, there was no relationship to maintain. I didn't feel relief right away. I felt disoriented. When you've spent years being needed, being left alone feels like withdrawal. But slowly, something else crept in. Peace. Without my monthly transfers, reality hit them fast. Patricia's salon didn't magically collapse overnight. It struggled, then it panicked, then it failed. I heard through Denise that suppliers had been unpaid for months, bills stacked, rent overdue. The money I'd been sending wasn't helping her succeed. It was delaying consequences. When the checks stopped, so did the illusion. The salon closed within months. Patricia tried reaching me through relatives, voicemails dripping with accusation. "You turned your back on us. You ruined everything." I didn't respond, because for the first time, I understood something clearly. Adults are responsible for their own lives. Even when they're angry, you won't save them anymore. Ryan's fall was quieter. No explosion, just gravity. Without my money, his lifestyle collapsed. The designer clothes disappeared. The phone got downgraded. The jokes stopped. He took a job waiting tables at a diner on the edge of town. Minimum wage, long hours. I didn't feel satisfied. I didn't feel guilty. I felt neutral. That's how you know you've healed past resentment. My dad never reached out. That hurt more than anything else. But eventually, I stopped waiting. I stopped wondering what apology might come. I stopped hoping he'd finally choose me. Some people don't change. They just reveal. And acceptance is its own kind of freedom. With the weight gone, my life expanded. I reinvested in my restaurant, not just financially, but emotionally. I hired help, trusted my team, stopped running myself into the ground. Revenue grew, but more importantly, my energy returned. I started sleeping again, laughing again, living again. I also started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand why I'd tolerated being drained for so long. My therapist said something I'll never forget. Being the strong one doesn't mean being the sacrificial one. That sentence rewired me. I learned how guilt had shaped my boundaries, how grief had trained me to overgive, how love without limits becomes self-erasure. And slowly, I learned how to say no without explaining myself. I also found love. Not dramatic, not consuming, healthy. Michael came into my life quietly, a carpenter, grounded, kind. He didn't need fixing. He didn't expect saving. He showed up consistently. And for the first time, love didn't feel like a transaction. It felt like rest. My apartment became a sanctuary, not a symbol of escape, but of arrival. Every window, every quiet morning, every night I locked the door behind me, reminded me, I built this. No one gifted it to me. No one extracted it from me. It was mine. Looking back, I don't see the reunion as humiliation anymore. I see it as the moment the truth stopped whispering and finally spoke. That moment didn't destroy my family. it revealed it. And in doing so, it gave me permission to choose myself. If you're listening to this and feel exhausted, if your worth feels tied to what you give, if the people closest to you only show up when they need something, hear this. You are not selfish for setting boundaries. You are not cruel for stopping the bleed. And you are not abandoning anyone by choosing yourself. You're just finally stepping into your own life. And that is always worth it.